Good afternoon, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great privilege for me on behalf of the World Economic Forum and our partner CII, and also now the government of India, to welcome the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar here to our meeting. Thank you for coming, and we know that you just arrived this morning from an important visit to the US. We also know that Prime Minister Modi had a very successful visit to the US last week. Also had 50,000 expats, Indian expats, meeting him and President Trump in Houston. Maybe, Minister, you were there too. I think it was greeted "Howdy Modi" by the crowds. Is there no, under Prime Minister Modi and your leadership, would you say it's a special relationship between the US and India, and is this something new? Because in the 70s it used to be with Russia.
70s was a long time, ago. Though mind you, I started to work in the 70s, so I can still hazily remember it. But look, I'm not sure what adjective I would put on it, but definitely, I mean, if the kind of event you saw in Texas, the Howdy Modi event, it's not too many countries who can do that. So certainly that is something unique. But the fact is, if you look at our relationship with the US, how much it's changed, the extent of convergences that we have with the US, shared interest in many areas, the size of the economic relationship, the trade, the investment, the knowledge relationship with the US, the fact that that has given rise to actually industries in the Indian economy. The community, we are today depending, I think the American citizens, the Indian Americans would be about 3.5 million, maybe 2 million plus more of Indians living out there. So you put it all together, and so many students.
And very successful Indians too, yes, many indeed. CEOs in the big companies.
Absolutely. So if you put it all together, I would say in many ways it's a pretty unique relationship. And I think that was reflected partly in what was visible at Houston.
Yesterday we had Secretary Wilbur Ross of Commerce here, and also in a discussion with your Commerce Minister. And there is a lot of suspense, and there's a lot of interest. Is there going to be a trade deal between the largest economy in the world, being the US, and the fastest growing of the emerging economies of size, like India? Are you, what was the zeitgeist you felt when you were in the White House yesterday and met with the new National Security Advisor and other Trump advisor? Is it going to happen?
Well, if you had our Commerce Minister and Mr. Ross here, I'll go with any answer they gave you. Because ultimately they have to work it out. And the only thing which I can tell you...
I think Lighthizer is involved too a bit.
Yeah, sure. But what I can tell you as a foreign minister is I understand, as a interested spectator, that this is it's not that easy. It's a fairly complicated set of issues, because you are really looking at trying to clear up issues for which there isn't mirror imaging in many ways. So I guess if they are taking a little time, they would be justified in doing so. From what I read in the newspapers today, both of them sounded kind of cautiously optimistic. Would that be right?
No, I think that is the feeling I got also.
Yeah, sure.
We had a closed meeting yesterday between the two of them that I moderated.
Right.
But also having been trade minister in my country,
So-
before I have negotiated it with India and U.S. separately, and
You have my sympathies.
I would say, no, I would say that it would be very interesting to be a fly on the wall during those negotiations,
Absolutely.
because they're some of the best prepared trade negotiators in the world, both of you. Huh?
Which is why you had my sympathies.
Yes.
Look, seriously, I do know a lot of work has gone into it. I know teams have been meeting, and clearly Mr. Goyal has the lead on our side, and Ambassador Lighthizer has on the American side. And my sort of last check on it was just before Prime Minister met President Trump, and I think a lot of people heard them speak about it to the press. So whatever was the mood, the temperature check that you did yesterday, I guess that would really be the latest.
But I think also, with all due respect, we know a foreign ministry is also very influential in this context, and trade negotiators can continue for decades just arguing about one agriculture product. But it seems that if there is a political will, and if there is a will from the top and say, let's now try to agree on something, it can happen. And it seems like now it is a special moment also in the relationship between those two countries, and maybe the situation with China has also created more momentum for this deal and Japan. Is that correct?
Well, look, I mean, you may have a point, but in our case, what I can say is that certainly in this government, the concerned ministers, which is really trade, finance, foreign, and some of the line ministries, because they're sectoral ministries, because their interests are involved. People really work together very, very closely as a team. I know that is a caricature of a trade negotiator, that they can go on endlessly on very siloed issues. But you would have seen yesterday, our Commerce Minister is a very strategic person. So he's completely capable of managing this, trust me.
Talking about being strategic, we have seen that you and your government has also made a priority of South Asia. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of participants there and guests from Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, also Sri Lanka, Maldives. We also saw that you stepped up the money that you allocate for partnerships with many of these countries. Will we see an enlarged Indian footprint in South Asia? And is also this due to the fact that many of these countries, it's like India meeting China?
I don't think it's so much India meeting China. I would put it quite differently. When you travel around in the world, and you wouldn't disagree with me, South Asia, the Indian subcontinent, is really among the least regionalized economies that you see. There are various reasons for it. From the very start, Prime Minister feels very strongly that we need to do something about this. And we have to convince our neighbors that really the Indian economy is a lifting tide for all of them. Because we are the largest economy and the largest country, a lot of that responsibility is on us. You could see that even politically in his first steps when he was sworn in 2014. He invited all the the neighboring countries for his swearing in. That was a political signal. But after that, in those 5 years, the first term, we've really made a great effort really to do the things which other regions have done. Build connectivity, increase contacts, have a greater flow of people, encourage more business between them. And we've done that really without setting aside the old sort of the more orthodox diplomacy. We don't talk reciprocity in our neighborhood anymore. And you can see that reflected in the numbers. I mean, today we have very ambitious lines of credit, soft loans to all our neighbors. There are a lot of projects which are done under grant. The training numbers have gone up many times. We've gone into new areas, and it's really hard. It's already actually, you can see the impact both on their economies, on our economies, and the connection in between. And if I were to give you very common sense examples, I mean, you would have situations where, let us say, it's easier to go to a port of a neighbor than it is to your own port, but in the old days you wouldn't do it, or you would have excess electricity in one part of India, demand in a neighboring country, but there's no way by which you could do the transmission. So today, if you look, what we are actually trying to do on the ground, power transmission, fuel supply, building border roads, sometimes fairly deep inside the other country, port, connectivity to ports, creating effective waterways. So there's an enormous push, railways, and this is the case, I would say probably the most advanced would be Bangladesh. We are now making very good headway in Nepal. So there are road projects, rail projects underway out there. We've started about 2-3 years ago power supply to Myanmar. It's still in the early stages. We've done a lot of railway lines in Sri Lanka. Bhutan has historically actually been our best partner in terms of development assistance. So pretty much I would say the entire neighborhood -1 has been actually a fairly good story of regional cooperation, and I think you will see that continue to probably see that scaled up. It's reflected in our foreign ministry budgets, and I kind of see that going higher.
Thank you for mentioning this -1, because that gave me a chance to also address maybe what some people in the room would say is like the elephant in the room. I guess, did you have any meetings when you were in the US where the Kashmir issue didn't come up?
Yes. I did have some, in fact, quite a few. Yeah. There were some where it did come up, and it didn't come up in my business meetings. It didn't come up even in some of the policy meetings, because I think people knew our position, and but it did come up on quite a few occasions. So, but that's natural, because for many people there's a change of status quo. There's a change, and when there's a change, naturally there's interest.
And there is looking forward. Would you say that -1 is a permanent impasse?
No, I won't. I won't, because then I would, as someone from a diplomatic stream, I would be admitting that something is not possible, that diplomacy has limits, and I cannot ever accept that.
The Soviet Union was forever until it was no more,
No, I would certainly hope one day that even the -1 comes around, because you put Kashmir aside for a moment, and I'll come to that. Today, if with everybody else, trade is on the increase, contacts are on the increase, business is on the increase, connectivity is on the increase. I mean, surely at some stage that would have an impact, because you would see everybody else prospering with that cooperation and contacts. So I always remain hopeful. I'm not unrealistic there. I know that we have big challenges, that they have a mindset issue out there that they have to overcome. But going back to your question on Kashmir, look, I think what I spoke fairly extensively when I was in the US, and in many cases, when I made points to people, giving them the background, the history, what happened, why we did what we did, a lot of it was new to them, you know. For example, because mostly they read their own press, hardly anybody actually had a realization that this was a temporary article of the Constitution, or the fact that the sort of the misalignment due to the fact that a lot of our national laws did not apply in the Jammu and Kashmir state. So these were all new things to them, because the press normally what it does is it gives you a very black and white picture. On many issues, it gives you a picture which corresponds to preconceptions which people have. The press is not without, it likes to shape the narrative in some ways. So I think it was useful to talk about it in a very open manner and give people what was our perspective. I think many cases, people more, I saw people absorbing that, and hopefully they agreed with it.
Thank you, Minister. Just looking at the world in more like a macro perspective, we have gone, to be a bit simplistic, from situation with Cold War to maybe some people would say hot peace. There is a lot of conflicts around the world. We also at the same time have a true multipolar world. At least it's starting to become so. Some people would say we have a G2, but I think there is also many arguments that there are a lot of players now. There is also less momentum around the multilateral processes. WTO is facing real challenges, and as a Bretton Woods institution, in this multipolar, multi-conceptual world, India is the largest democracy in the world, 1.2 billion people. Aspiration is 5 trillion economy by 24, maybe 10 trillion economy by 2030. So India's influence is growing. Will that also lead to India taking, we will see a bigger footprint also from India on foreign and security policy in the region? In the 70s and the 80s, India was in many ways the leader of the non-allied world. Today, it is a new reality, and where will India place itself, and what kind of political initiatives will we see from India in this multipolar world?
Okay, there are a lot of questions in there. So let me make a few sharp points as a collective answer. One, no question, the world is more nationalistic than in the past. And a lot of that nationalism is economic nationalism and cultural nationalism. Second, I would say where India is concerned, we in a way are a standout. We are an exception. We are an exception because in this country you could say, yes, we are more nationalistic, but at the same time we don't see a tension between being nationalistic and being international in the sense of dealing more with the world and engaging more with the world. So the nationalism is not a kind of a negative sentiment directed at the world. In fact, people generally feel if you're going up, you should be doing more things with the world, not less things with the world. Third, in a more multipolar, your word, nationalistic, my word, world, I think we will see diplomacy take different forms where the old ways of working will now not go away, but be tempered by much more, I would say, creative, innovative, ad hoc kind of working arrangements, often centering around issues rather than across the board. So the character of international politics will probably change in many ways. Four, I agree with you. I think a lot of multilateral regimes will come under stress. How they survive will depend on how they respond to that. They will come under stress partly because of this nationalism that I spoke about. To some extent, a lot of them are also being critiqued for how well they work or don't work. So there's a kind of performance audit on multilateral regimes also going on. Sometimes that can take very unfair directions, because if you do a performance audit with a very self-centered nationalistic view, then I'm not sure I'd agree with the conclusions of that audit. But certainly that too is a factor. So all in all, I would say a more complicated world, definitely a more interesting one, possibly a more difficult one. But where India is concerned, you know, you also made a reference to G2. That's something we have never accepted. We've never been comfortable with. I think partly what would also distinguish us from other countries is that we still have a very strong relationship with countries of the South. And we, in many negotiations, which you would have seen as trade minister as well, we not only stand for our own interest, to a large extent we voice collective interests of the developing world, G77, for example, certainly when it comes to trade or when it comes to climate change. So I think that's also a constituency for us. Now, when you look at all of this, you could on the one hand say, okay, it's all getting more difficult, probably true. But you could also say that we are in a very unique position, that today, being a market economy, a democracy, socially pluralistic, we have comfort with the West. Being Asian, part of the rise of Asia, we have comfort with a lot of this rebalancing in Asian countries. Having a G77 constituency working with countries of Africa and Asia, we have a much stronger bonding with those countries. So I think we could be at the right intersection. A lot of it, therefore, requires active diplomacy to make sure that those constituencies are all sort of brought together. That's very much the intention of the government. So what you have seen really, definitely over the last 5 years, and you saw recently at the UN, is a willingness today to go out, engage countries, visit more countries, and therefore you can see a new energy in foreign affairs.
No, we have seen your very busy agenda following you on Twitter. You can be exhausted just by reading your Twitter account. And also your point about Asia, this is the first year, at least since 1850, that Asia is 50% of the global GDP. I think one thing is certain, that India's influence and size in the global economy is just going to increase in the years to come. When will we see Belt and Road kind of initiatives from India's side, or is that not your cup of tea? Will you join the Belt and Road Initiative, or will you not? Third question in the same area. You know, superpowers, traditionally, but also like today, I would say China is the second largest economy, the US is the largest economy, also have this view of that they follow very closely what is happening in their backyard. Of course, there's no Monroe Doctrine anymore, but this notion of Monroe Doctrines is still there. Would India accept whatever happened in your own backyard when it comes to military establishment and etc.? Or that would also be quite interesting too, if you could elaborate on that.
Okay, let me work backwards on your set of questions.
I'm glad you're starting with the last one.
No, look, the world's a competitive place, okay? So all of us might have preferences, but, world doesn't run by entitlements. World runs by capabilities, by influence, by interest. So I would hope very much that we have the ability to influence and compete, which will secure our interests. Now, we are fairly clear what our interests are. You put it very diplomatically. I congratulate you. But the fact is that I will certainly.
I'm looking at the ambassador from Maldives just here in front of me.
So
I wanted to be a bit careful.
We will certainly make sure that our ability to compete, our ability to secure and advance our interests, our ability to influence other countries, which is all, by the way, this is what international relations is about. So I would certainly hope that that remains sharp, that remains effective. And in this exercise, normally, if there is an epicenter, which is yourself, then how good you are is a function of distance. So you start with your immediate neighborhood. If you can't influence your immediate neighborhood, it is very unlikely you'll be able to influence beyond. So to me, that's like the first circle of your interests. Regarding your Belt and Road issue, we have a long-standing position on that. For us, it is connected with sovereignty matters, so that hasn't changed. But the idea of do we do something similar? Look, we are us. We are not some other country, and I think it's not just on this initiative. I think in a whole lot of other areas. My own sense is, as India becomes bigger, the fact is we will find that concepts and analytics which are developed for other countries would not necessarily apply to us. And the expectation that we would copy models which are very different in nature, I don't think that's very likely. Because typically, I mean, we do a lot of things even in our own neighborhood, some of which may surprise you, the scale of which. But it's not, this is in a way, you do these things. I mean, it's done even within India, if you look at it. It's the manner of which it's done is much more disaggregated, it's much more organic. On connectivity, for example, rather than say we have a grand initiative, we would much rather say, okay, we have a development partnership. In fact, that's exactly what my Prime Minister said when he went to Africa last year, where he said, look, we are prepared to do very much more in Africa, but we would like to know what you want. And we'd like to know your priority, and we'd like you to take part in it, and we'd like you to actually own and operate it once we have set it up. So I think that's very much more our manner of doing things. So it may not make that splash, but I think in many ways, I mean, if you go to some countries, for example, you go to Afghanistan, it's not a story which always comes in the headlines, but I would really say with a degree of confidence that probably more Afghans know about what India has done in terms of development than most other countries.
So a softer form of diplomacy
yes.
from the largest democracy.
I would say softer, more collaborative, more co-owned, look I mean, this is us, okay? I mean, other countries can legitimately differ. I would say if you're doing something, I would much rather be that sense of partnership comes out rather than other people think that it's all mine. It's more likely to stay, it's more likely to give me the kind of returns that I really want.
We also know from history that superpowers will be challenged to also try to deal with conflicts in the region. Would we also see India, for example, volunteering to also try to be a mediator in some of the conflicts in the region? Could we, for example, see...
This is a very Norwegian question.
Norway has never been a superpower.
No, but that has not stopped you mediating.
I used to say when I was foreign minister, the only organization in the world where Norway is a superpower is EFTA. And EFTA is this free trade organization with Switzerland, Liechtenstein, and Iceland. So, and we tried to establish a trade deal with India. But on this, for example, we know the situation for Rohingyas between Myanmar and Bangladesh. Could that be something where India could be a mediator? Maybe an even a bigger question that I think we all are concerned about is the situation in the Gulf and with Iran. That has been escalating. It's been a little bit more quiet the last week because there are other things in the media, but I don't think the structural challenges related to this is dealt with. Or is it a very Norwegian perspective?
No, look, I mean, if I look back on our history, there are times when we've done some of that. We took a little bit of interest in the Iran-Iraq war in the early stages. We did not successful mediation in Sri Lanka.
Not as bad as the Norwegians, though, I think.
No, actually ours ended up worse.
Okay.
So, you know, it's not entirely without some past. But I think the Indian way would be very much more that if you have relationships to sort of talk about it, to have conversations, but not declare yourself a mediator and not really kind of create that space and sort of create that profile. I don't think that's really been our style. I don't. I mean, I would say personally, I'm not sure for a country like us. I mean, I'm not prescribing for everybody else, but I would. It's not something which I see great profit in. But having said that, you know, some of the examples that you raised, say you raised Myanmar, Bangladesh. Now we have excellent relations with both. We actually have made. I mean, we are the first country to actually complete a project in the Rakhine state after the the problems. We've done a housing project, and we are hoping that that would be the nucleus for the first set of people to go back. So we have relations there. Our relations with Bangladesh, of course, are absolutely outstanding, the best ever. So it's not that we don't, we are staying away but I think we just handle it much differently from the manner in which you put it.
And I think the bigger a country is, the more power you also have in inspiring countries. And you are, I think, the largest FDI investor in Bangladesh and the second one in Myanmar. I think the Chinese are larger there by far than you. But coming back also to what you mentioned about connectivity and also technology. When you were in DC, I don't know if you felt it the same way. I was there last week, and behind this trade war notion, there is also a lot about technologies. Mm-hmm. Who's going to be on top of the new technologies? And I think there is Sputnik moments in many countries these days, and many countries do see that those countries that are on top of the new technologies, and in the platform economy, the winner has a tendency to take it all, will also come out of this century as the most influential ones. Last year at this time, I was here, and Prime Minister Modi opened the World Economic Forum's Center for the Fourth Industrial Revolution in India that is placed in Mumbai. But on the technology side, how did you see technologies also now as an important factor in foreign policy, and you see that as an underlying factor more and more?
Well, look, if you look at the global scene, yes, the term Sputnik moment is used. But by the way, bear in mind the Sputnik moment was for the non-Sputnik country. You know, it was the U.S. actually reacting to the Sputnik in a way. The country which sent up the Sputnik didn't fare so well after that. So clearly, I mean, today the political competition or strategic competition is also expressing itself very much as a technology competition, if you would. So when there is, I mean, first of all, as I said, competition is natural. The idea, of course, is while it is natural, it is not unconstrained, that somewhere the net result of that is positive. If it gives people more choices, it's actually all for the good. So in that sense, it's a little bit like politics. I mean, we would prefer a multipolar world because it gives you more choices. So if you have a multipolar technological world, that too gives you more choices. But on the issue of where we are, I mean, it's very clear that we have to go down that direction. And if you look, I mean, we are one of those countries where really for every country, its assets are its people, but many countries have other assets too, as you know, in Norway. But we are really completely HR dependent. Our future is completely HR dependent. So a lot of it, to my mind, would be to prepare yourself for a future by improving the quality of your HR and getting your people prepared for a different world. And that can start right down to the basics. I mean, it starts from primary health and literacy and up to, education, to skilling, to digitizing, to employing. I mean, all of that is part of really improving the quality of our HR. And to my mind, that is one area where we had lagged behind. I would certainly see that as really the core priority of this government. I mean, if you look at the totality of all the programs they do, there's a single thread that connects them. And the single thread is really to really improve the quality of human resources of this country.
No, and it's so, I agree so much. I think this upskilling, reskilling, building the human capital in the country is so crucial. I think on behalf of all the participants, I think we all feel that India is very privileged to have such an insightful foreign minister. At the end, because we're not going to clear the ground for the next session, but just to, I think you partly answered it at the end now about building on the human capital, but you're one, I think you were the second minister coming from the foreign service, so you have a vast experience on foreign policy and security policy as a former permanent secretary and civil servant and ambassador for many years. If you then look at what kind of footprint you would like to leave in the ministry and India's foreign policy, if you could just in a minute or two share with us that at the end, it would be, we would appreciate it.
Well, look, I've just come in. I mean, you're asking me what would it be when I leave. I think you need to give me a few years to think that through.
I think you have made some reflections.
No, but seriously, look, I would certainly like to see Indian foreign policy have a bigger footprint, to see it much more influential in determining the outcomes of global issues, to obviously see our interest and influence secured in our immediate periphery and beyond. But at the end of the day, I'm very conscious that we are preparing a foreign policy for a country which, within a decade would be the third largest economy, which would be the most populous country, and which carries a lot of burdens of the past, in the sense that, we missed a lot of opportunities in the past, beginning with 1945 when the global order was fashioned. So how do you make up for all the things which you lost out on and yet prepare for all the things that await you? So it will require a lot of thinking through, a lot of imagination, and a lot of energy. And I try to at least prepare a launching pad for it.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.